Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Jointflows. Today we've got the honor of being joined by Vera Skulteti, Head of Sales Operations at Vitesse. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me, guys.
We've got a bit of history with Vera. We've had the pleasure of working with her as well during our time at Utilization, so it's always great to connect. But not all of our listeners will know you as well as we do. So bring them up to speed.
That's
Who is
right.
Vera and how have you
Cool.
got to where you have today?
Yeah, oh wow, it's a long journey actually. But so currently at Vitesse, as you mentioned, head of sales operations, heading up sales enablement as well, actually. Um, and I actually started out in finance, so that's why I did my degree in, and was a finance and sales ops director for a while. Like the sales ops just came sort of organically, as nobody was back in the day managing that side of the business. So I just kind of, it was sort of accidental, organically started to do things in there, and I really enjoyed it. And finance sort of got left behind, and I pivoted into sales operations. So I just do that full time now. Really enjoy it. I really love working together with salespeople. So that was pretty much the reason why, like you guys. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So for our listeners again, define sales operation. What is it that sales ops do?
Oh, wow. Okay, good question. So sales operation is looking after the sales team and facilitating pretty much the end-to-end customer journey. That's rather revenue operations, but we're sort of expanding the responsibilities here, I think. In my current position, I am looking after from, BD and SDRs and sign-up, so kind of marketing operations that starts there, lead gen, all that stuff, and all the way through, closing and then customer relations, so the customer success team as well, relationship management. So it's a really, really wide remit, whereas like, facilitating all the processes, because as you know, within the business, especially when it's a startup scale up, these processes change very quickly and often. And so you kind of need to adjust, train the people on there, communicate, breaking down all those silos between the different departments, because we're working together with all the different departments as well, everybody contributing to that success, right? So
Yeah.
working together with legal and compliance and all the, HR, of course, with the L&D and all the knowledge. You provide all that knowledge, the market knowledge that they actually need to consume, the
Yeah.
product knowledge that they need for their job. So yeah, it's quite a lot of stuff, and yeah, helping with these cross-functional relationships as well, which is very interesting and super enjoyable.
Yeah. And so obviously you're enabling a wide remit of different teams across the organization as well.
Yeah.
How do you decide where to focus and what to do? Because I imagine there's so many different things you could do that can move the needle. How do you determine, all right, this is number one priority, this is how we're going to go
Yeah,
about it, this is number two, three, and four, and so forth?
absolutely. That's a really, really good question. Because there are a lot of competing priorities within the
Mm.
business, and all the different teams would. So, just going back quickly to the CRM, of course, that is sort of the basis of what you're working off. And so, everybody would need like a little help there, or like onboarding, or implement our processes so they can all work together very nicely and seamlessly. With the competing priorities, then you sort of decide. I mean, this might sound a little bit funny, but it's a lot of this is kind of through experience. So it's
Mm.
just years of experience of what is actually important and necessary and the most urgent to do. And also, but the finance background and kind of seeing the bigger picture for a long time, being in that sort of position helped me a lot to understand strategically what's necessary, and then implementing it tactically and helping facilitating that side of the business as well. I think that's a kind of difficult position that you're in this field, that you have to be a strategical thinker as well as you have to be pretty good at like execution and tactical side of the business as well.
Mm.
Yeah, we had Seth Killian, who's one of like the main RevOps like thought leader in the US, and he was saying the difficulty for RevOps is kind of switching gear between, you know, having to think strategically, kind of board level, board pack, you know, all these kind of sessions, but also the very tactical sometimes element of, hey, I need to fix my quote, or I need to unlock that field in Salesforce. So like,
Yeah.
how much of your time do you think is done doing more tactical things than strategic, or vice versa?
So for me, because I have a great team in place as well, the strategic part is taking priority now, which
Yeah.
is great. But I do slip back into tactical as well. Of course, when there's, you know, busy periods like now, there's not enough hands to actually execute on the tactical side either. And because I do enjoy going back to it sometimes, you know, things change and technology changes. I like to keep up with that as well. So I like doing my research on them, my learning. So I don't really mind switching between the two because I think that makes it interesting. But I would say probably strategic thinking is now 60, 70%,
Yeah.
you know, 30, 40 is the tactical. Yeah.
Yeah. And how much of your, so we speak a lot about RevOps and the synergy between RevOps and sales, and, you know, RevOps is, I think, is the biggest growing, the fastest growing
Yes, it is.
job
Yeah.
title, I think, in
It
SaaS.
is.
Like, how much of your role is to do with systems versus upskilling and learning and like skill sets?
So, you know, the systems are, people get a little bit obsessed with it, and there's like always a new shiny object and then get distracted. So it is very difficult to just keep a level head in the situation when everything is like everything about technology and the new AI tool has just come up, and you know, when you want to test this and try that and find a solution, but things are not as complicated often as we see them, I think. So when you break it down, go back to basics, you will find that quite a lot can be resolved much easier, and implementing a new system and, you know, training and make it stick is just so difficult and time consuming. I think you're better off often to select a few really good ones, because you do need that support as like technology, and then work on that. And unless there's a real good reason and a business case where you have to bolt something else on, I just wouldn't kind of get carried away very quickly. I think you have to build a very good case for it. Yeah, but it's a big part of it, the technology and understanding it, because I think often people would utilize maybe 10% of the technology they already have.
Yeah.
And then just kind of not understanding the ins and outs of it. And I'm generalizing here. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are very amazing at it and understand it like completely. But what I've experienced and seen is that the knowledge is just very superficial usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as that role is becoming, you know, more and more important within organizations as well, it's also evolved, and you've obviously been performing in this capacity for quite a while as well. How have you seen this role transition? Like, how have the responsibilities changed and, you know, the remit changed and evolved?
Do you mean in like RevOps, SalesOps in particular?
Correct, yeah.
I think it's taken a much more like strategic partnership position over the years. Even when I started, I think it was sort of a new thing. I know it wasn't really, but I don't think there was a general understanding of what this role is about. And still, I can see it that people just say, "Oh, the Salesforce person," and it's just, you know, it's so much more wider and much more complex than that. That you understand the processes behind it and you facilitate what's going on and help the people. So I think the understanding of that has grown massively, and the understanding of, like, you know, CROs and CCOs, that they really need this person from early on in this life cycle of the business, because things very quickly get quite hectic, and then you end up with a big problem when none of your processes are sorted, your business is growing rapidly, and then all that backlog needs to be tidied up, and it's very
Yeah.
difficult in that position when you haven't started off with a good foundation. I don't know if this makes sense, but you know, not everybody can afford, of course, like a full-time person there. But even if you have someone who can facilitate just the basics, like tidying things up, you don't have to start with a, you know, head of, or I mean, it's best if you do, but even like an admin person who understands like how to kind of facilitate your pipeline, you know, and you don't
Yeah.
have them in like Excel files, then that's a major step forward, I think.
Yeah. And how do you decide, you know, when you're saying, you know, it's an important hire, getting them in early, how early in a business's evolution should you be introducing that as a hire? And it's interesting
For
because I get
example,
different opinions all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. For example, in my current organization, I was the first hire in the commercial team. And so I already kind of mapped out the processes with the help of other C-level stakeholders within the business. So by the time we started to hire all the salespeople, like the commercial team, the business development people, relationship managers, they already had a system in place and the processes, the basic processes and understanding. So we would know, I mean, they could just start with lead generation and fill their pipelines rather than, oh, where do I find this? Or I need to manage it off an Excel sheet. And there's confusion. You know what it's like when it's like, oh, whose lead is this and who's this person? I can't find anything. And, you know, you can't put them through the proper sales cycle. It's really difficult to stage manage at that point. Yeah, I think it's, if you can afford it, even like a fractional sales ops person or revenue ops person would be very helpful, I think. I mean, that's 2-3 days a week, somebody can do that, right?
Yeah.
For a small organization. But I think for a startup, 4 or 5 years in, it really depends on how quickly you grow, right? It's like how many people you've got in the business, what's your turnover, what's your pipeline like? Yeah, it's probably more about the figures rather than the years.
And so I remember when we worked together at Yieldify, there were, you know, we see a lot of organizations kind of layering rules on top of rules on top of rules, and then over the years, like an object has been created with a drop down, another one is a field, free text kind of field, and then the data is just not usable. Null is not usable, but you can't even retrieve it. There's no consistency in it. Like some of the data is old, then there's a big gap, then there's new data on it. So how do you ring fence I guess a CRM platform so that the adoption is high, but it's also not overkill to kind of maintain it and administer it?
Yeah, so you remember, it's a good example when I started Yieldify and how I had to kind of totally unpack the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was absolutely insane, right? You guys went into Salesforce and literally couldn't save no record without getting an error message back. So it's massive frustration. Your adoption rates just absolutely plummet at that point, and you've got no data, as you mentioned. It's not structured really well. I usually say, because people are like, oh, don't sweat the small stuff. I think that's what you need to sweat a lot, because if you get the details right, then the bigger picture adds up very nicely from those small things. So I think it's a major skill to have attention to detail and structure. So thinking structure and being able to structure that data. So when you think about utility of, you know, different levels, so like your sales leaders, sales managers, sales leaders, C-level, they're all going to find the information that they actually need very easily. So when you start doing reporting dashboards, you have to think that much ahead. And also for the business development managers and, you know, relationship managers, they have to just be able to go in the system and find it easy to use. It's already, you know, for salespeople, admin is already such a faff. They don't like doing it. And if there's like another, you know, difficulty in the way, they're just going to be like, okay, well, I can't really be bothered doing this over and over again, because it's just so difficult to save anything in there, and I don't get anything out of it, right? So in the end, you end up with reports that's not usable. You can't really get the information that you need out of it, or not easily, because you remember how many fields there were in there.
Oh yeah,
Just you can't even pick out, like, what field do I need here in the report?
yeah.
If you've got like hundreds of fields and you don't use it on like every day, then you won't find what you're looking for. So again, simplicity, think about details, think in structure, build a system like that. If you think that you've done something or things change, you know, you can rethink it, reconsider what's best. You can change it as well. The business changes, you will have to change things.
Yeah.
You have to consider a lot of stuff because everything's integrated. So you have to think about, like, okay, what impact does that have on other people, other departments? So it is hard, but it's possible.
How many? So there's a lot of conversations, as you know, about consolidation and okay, we actually need less tech, and then more of that needs to be in Salesforce. What's the optimal amount of technologies, especially in sales? Let's just speak about sales. That a salesperson you feel can keep up with, and then how many is like way too many? So like you take into account conversational intelligence, prospecting tools like, you know, the sales engagement platforms. And how many is too many versus the optimal number?
That's a really good question. As long as they are native to Salesforce, I think there could be a little bit more. But then, what's the business case for it, right? It depends on the nature of your business. In SaaS, I think people have to overload a little bit on, like, oh, this technology will resolve our problem. But at the end of the day, there's quite a lot that's not going to be resolved, because your salespeople are not asked to, you know, log the data properly, or this is not being like kind of the basic requirements, and it's not being monitored. And so all of these systems only worth what you actually put in or how well you utilize them.
Yeah.
So building like system over system over system just to fix a problem that's actually not even come from a system issue, or like not having a platform, that's not a good solution. If you are, you know, if you trained your teams and they really need some sort of platform like LinkedIn Sales now, for example, of course they need it for like lead gen. Cool, plugs into Salesforce, wonderful. You can literally see it within the platform. You can do your demand gen, all that stuff, outreach from there. Very easy, right? We need those contacts. We need to be able to see who's who. Lovely. With your conversation intelligence, Salesforce does that also. Plugs into Teams. A lot of companies still use Teams and Microsoft, but also perfectly integrated with G Suite as well. So, you know, you can find a lot of source. I know Salesforce is not the answer to everything, because they started as like a customer relationship management platform and then bolted on like stuff that they're not very good at. And it's always like, we're very good at something and then other stuff are fine. So you just need to decide what you're going to give up for it, a little bit like that. But you know, you just need to make that decision. If you need to add anything else on there, I think it's have like a decent strategy on how to implement it. Always have like a good plan. Always have a plan how to measure ROI. If it's not working, people don't like it, there's no, the adoption rates are low, have to reconsider, you know, is it something that I'm doing wrong, not training my team properly, or they actually didn't even need it the first place, because that's not how they work, haven't assessed their needs properly. Or is it a system issue? Or is it just like, it was good for a while, but now we need to move on to another one? So there's quite a lot of that. Me having been in finance, I'm very cost conscious as well at the same time. So I very much think about like, okay, is this going to be worth it? How much does it cost? Is it going to be utilized properly? Do we have the time to implement? Do we have the time to train? Do you have
Yeah.
it's ongoing training as well, right? And it doesn't stop there. Like once I've trained people on Salesforce, then it's like, okay, they're all done. It doesn't work that way. You have to keep doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I speak to a lot of CROs very frequently because of obviously what our product does and, who our market is. And the one thing they always point out, or a lot of them, is it's very, very difficult for me to get my team to update Salesforce or HubSpot, whatever CRM they're using. Obviously, that makes your job really difficult as well when the C-suite come to you and say, hey, Vera, help us out. We need to understand this. What are the metrics of this? What the numbers look like over here? Blah, 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 blah. How is it that you can encourage, or how is it you get that piece right? How do you get the basic fundamentals of data entry correct for a sales team? Or do you think that's just something that sits with the CRO and hey, you need to get them to do that?
Both, I think, is the answer. First of all, that Salesforce is like a very highly customizable platform. So you can just absolutely customize it to your business needs and your sales or other teams' needs, the way that they work in their processes. So when setting up the system, you have to be conscious of what the data that we're collecting are for. If there's no reason to collect that data, just don't put the field in. Like so many fields are there in systems that nobody uses in reporting, or nobody even fills in the data. So less is more, basically, as always.
Yeah.
And then make sure that you show what the use case is here again, right? So if somebody is requesting a field, you need to assess, like, yes, every single field. They have to have a reason. We need to assess, have to make sure who's going to actually own this data. So there has to be a person or a group of people who's going to own it. Then you have to like run reports of, I don't know, I don't like to call it like some people call it like a Salesforce police or something. I think it's a bit much, but something like that when you're looking at data hygiene all the time. So somebody needs to run like if you've got a Salesforce exec or a Salesforce manager runs the reports once a week, however, it depends on your sales cycle as well, like a sales cycle or your pipeline, once a week, you run that, you have a look at it, you then contact the people, why is this not filled in, blah, blah, blah. You have to make it also, I think, easy for people to save records, because very often when it throws those errors at you, that's really, really annoying. So there could be notifications, which I prefer, but I usually, if it's not absolutely necessary, I wouldn't stop people from saving things. And I think that's a big thing, because people love putting in like validation rules and such, just because it makes our lives in Salesforce easier.
Yeah.
But then on the long run, it doesn't actually, because people will just leave it or put like things in there like ... and just kind of, people are just so creative, find a way around the system, especially salespeople, super creative.
Just
they put
in.
something in.
I used to do that.
Just like so it's not useful. And so I just don't usually do that unless we need a registered company name. Put the registered company name in. You can't save it without it. But that's probably, if we're thinking about an account record, maybe 4 fields that are compulsory. The rest could be like, you just get it, please don't forget to do this, right? But you can keep going. Then we sit down, have your weekly, bi-weekly review, and say, okay, what happened to this opportunity? You have to sit down and talk about it. And what happened? Because it could happen that you're in discovery stage, but you won't have certain information. It's so different, but for different cases, and you just have to keep the options open, I think.
Yeah, I remember after you waved your magic wand over our Salesforce instance, it did get a lot easier for me. I stopped tricking the system and started filling the information correctly. So
finally, exactly, right?
Exactly. So it's good.
Like wouldn't upset you. It's like a bit of a petulant child as well. It's like, it's not letting me. I don't want.
Absolutely. Vera, talk to us a little bit about the dynamics of a relationship between am I for Okay, so Vera, talk to us a little bit about the dynamics of your relationship with the CRO or someone in your role's relationship with the CRO. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I actually report directly to our CRO.
Okay.
I think usually that's the kind of setup
Hmm.
CCO CRO sort of relationship, right?
Correct. Yeah.
With the RevOps person, I think it's kind of like a right hand or sometimes left hand person, I suppose. But if we're lucky,
Yeah.
then it's a right hand person situation. Um, it is an interesting setup as it is because the salespeople don't report to you directly. Have you kind of have in this position that situation when you are asking them to do things? I am lucky, I think, because in my organization, this is working really well, I think. There could be other situations where maybe people are not so happy with this setup. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard, but I think it's a trust thing as well,
Mm.
right? If you're helping each other, trusting each other, I think this works really well. If it becomes like a situation where you're trying to push your agenda on the salespeople, you need to know what you're there for. I think is we're there for them, and I very often remind my team of that as well. Not that they need reminding; they are like super amazing and really really helpful. But I think we need to know that it's not they're doing stuff for us. We're supporting them.
Yeah. And Vera, I remember you setting up like I think it was Trailblazer or something.
Trailhead. Yeah.
And and you also mentioned during the beginning of the conversation that your remit has kind of expanded onto L&D and provided training to the sales team. And
Yeah.
how much of your role, or is this the common direction of RevOps to then overlap on actual learning and development and then put training sessions together for the sales team?
Yeah. So it's a sales enablement remit, right? The training for the commercial team. I'm hoping it's becoming more
Trajectory.
yeah, because that's a major part of it. And if you don't really know how to train and help people and learning systems, but also market knowledge and product knowledge, it becomes very difficult because it's part of the remit, right? To provide collateral,
Yeah.
to get the decks, and then the decks will sort of have that aspect of them of knowledge and product and also give the training on actual sales methodologies and frameworks, because it's really important for them
But
to be able to go on.
sorry, does that mean that you then maybe not attend sales calls, but you then watch call recordings and you start identifying where the gaps are?
Ideally, I think that the conversation intelligence is a very good solution, right? Because you can then, especially in these learning platforms now, there's built-in AI that gives you feedback and you can practice, because it's always so much easier to practice your I don't know, we've got a positioning deck, which is our elevator pitch basically. So just sit there, practice it, right? And then you get some feedback. It's after a certain point, it's impossible to have, like, if you've got, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 direct reports as a sales lead, it's impossible to practice this with people like that often. And then also you can't practice in front of a customer because you already have to be amazing at it. So I think these are really useful stuff, where they can learn and practice. But then it's not really replacing the personal training. So I think you have to use them in tandem with each other. They complement each other a lot. You have to, and it's not going to create your content for you. So you have to be able to create all that content, all the collateral, and then build it in. It's a lot of work, but understanding those needs and what their learning needs are, that's also much easier, because through the AI, you get the reports of this person struggling with this. So then you can see, the soft skills as well that they need improving. So how to kind of help them better, because every person is different. So can't just give them all like the same training, right? Because someone will be really good at like positioning or like elevator pitch, but not so good at value proposition, or not so good at discovery, because they're like, you know, we all know the proposition bit is like more of talking and the discovery is more of listening. So this two separate skills. It's just all that stuff is quite complex, and it's getting really difficult in a big team to service all that.
Yeah. And where are you seeing, as we're talking about training, where are you seeing the biggest gaps across commercial teams or across AEs?
The gaps in the market with technology, or for them knowledge wise?
For them in terms of their ability to do their job effectively. Because
Okay.
that's the goal, right? Is you provide them with the systems and the know-how to be able to excel within their job. So where do you see the biggest gaps?
Yeah, I don't want to offend anyone.
That's also where the biggest gaps is generalized.
But I think for sales background, it's usually like I come out of whatever uni and I just want to make a lot of money, right? So it's very often it's not like, oh, I really want to learn all these things. Just kind of want to get stuck in. So the methodologies and frameworks at this point are probably not read or learned. I think the biggest thing is pretty much getting them to want to learn. And after that, if there's understanding of like, oh, okay, cool, like this was my pipeline or conversion rates, and now I got put through this training, or I now understand like consultative sales methodology, and now my figures improve so much, then people get on board so much more. Up until then, it's just like, why are you wasting my time? And that's the hardest thing, and the biggest gap of like that want to discover, or I would call it that way, but this might be a little bit offensive to people.
No,
it's good.
Everybody's rubbish at discovery. Like I think it's universal, it's really about finding the pain, finding the personal consequence before you even position your products. But it's much easier to just position your products.
Sell. Yeah.
Since we've done Jointflows, I've fortunately bought a bit of technology in my career before then, but now I've sat on so many people trying to sell us technology as we've been setting up and as we've been evolving and growing, and it just surprises me. Like it's the process, the way people run their sales cycles, the way they run their meetings just surprises me. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of people out there who probably need a bit of training. I'm not saying I'm perfect, mind you, for anyone listening at all, but I'm just saying
you are.
I've seen some not good salespeople, shall I say?
And then you see some really good ones. It's very company specific. You can tell where the companies nailed the training part. You can, when you're on the receiving end of this, you will see the difference. Some companies got like amazing salespeople, and every single one of them are. So it's not by chance.
Not for sure.
Training.
What about Vera? I've got a question, and because that frustrates me. You've got an organization, and then you've got people like yourself in an organization who are building in a scalable way, and it's all through, as you said, like, what is the business case? What do we need to do to achieve it? And then are we beyond that? Like maybe we don't need to maintain that tech, like maybe we've overgrown it. And then you've got a new head of sales, a new CRO comes in with a new idea, is gonna rip everything and then be like, that's not how we operate. That's how we're gonna do it, and we're gonna change everything. How do you manage this relationship so that it doesn't destroy, like 2 or 3 years of build up?
Right. Good question. And I am not the best person, I think, to tell you how to do this, because I don't think I have mastered this just yet.
I was just going to say that.
I have ideas, you know. I try to soften it, and I try to say, okay, try spending a couple of months, because most of this time there's reason to the madness, right? Even if something looks a bit funky and you think, oh, this doesn't make sense, usually there is a reason to that, when you spend a little more time with the teams and see what the struggles are, because they always try to move around, work around obstacles that you can't see after 2 days, like spending in a role.
Yeah.
So I try to advise them to spend a little more time before getting stuck in and changing everything. And it's really tempting for people that start, because you want to show your impact for the organization, and want to show them why they hired you and pay you as much as they do. But I would advise everybody that are listening to just slow it down a bit. Nobody's expecting for you to change the world in like 3 months. Just take your time, see what's happening, and then, you know, changes might, you know, might be valid, or there might be a reason to do that, and often there is change, especially in our discipline. But just wait a little bit before you upset everything and for no reason.
And what about, so I'm asking this question selfishly because we've been on a few deals which we've been working on for like 6 months. We've got a really good understanding of the problem, mapped out solutions, adoption plans, like it's been properly worked on. And then you've got a new CRO joining it, all projects on hold. So
Is it Hitech?
That was not. That was some of our.
There's someone that we were trying to sign.
Yeah. So obviously a bit frustrating, but you're like, well, surely if the team has vetted the decision, like this person is not gonna maybe pause it to investigate it, but not stop it. But then the project then stops, and you're like, you've literally just wasted 6 months of work just because.
Frustrating.
And we're obviously on the vendor side, but internally the frustration is just as big. You're like, well, I've done all this work of finding a solution, mapping it out, and now because you didn't. How do you manage that? Like, what
you're in a very difficult position, because an average tenure of a CRO is like a year and a half, or where are we right now? So you come up against this issue very often, I suppose. Okay, so I usually say that if you get in touch with somebody early on, when you catch it very quickly, then it's best to talk to them in that moment and get on their right side, right? Because if you kind of hit it off from the beginning and they hear it from you, what this is about, is probably your best chance. Needs a little like flattering as well, I think. But you just do whatever you need to do at that point, because if there's like a couple of weeks, them spending time in their new role, start wanting to change things, they start hearing things from other people, and people's got agendas, right, within the organization as well. And there might be that the voices that were supportive of you are now changing. But it is a really difficult situation. I'm not really sure what else you could do there. Close quicker, I suppose.
Close before they start.
Close before they start.
Be more, maybe blackmailing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Awesome. Vera, look, appreciate you taking the time to join us. We're almost out of time, but we do have our wrap-up question, which is through your career to date, which has been a glorious career. So congratulations on that. What is your best memory and why?
So I actually remember you asking this from other guests as well. I kept thinking about it.
I asked it. It's the wrap up. Everyone
this
gets
is
it.
like the wrap up question. And I kept thinking about this, which is not even that much like a career thing, but it was just such a weird situation where when I was working for the 2012 bidding committee for the Euros, and then the the head of the bidding committee thought that it would be really fun to give real puppies to the mayors of the hosting cities. So it was like Croatia and Hungary jointly bidding for the Euros. And then, so he got the puppies there, but of course, nobody was like looking after them. So I was like, okay, so I'm now going to have to go home with like 4 puppies. But you know, I was like, okay, it's just 3 of us in this office. So I suppose somebody needs to take them home. So it's like, yeah, I had 4 puppies for 3 days because of it. Everything for the team.
Amazing.
Very cute.
Awesome. That I've not heard a memory like that so far. Amazing. Look, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I really enjoyed myself today, and it's always a pleasure seeing you and speaking to you. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.